Shalom Aleichem, Moshe Taragin, Parshas Tetzaveh for OU's All Parsha, speaking to you from OU Eretz Yisrael. So Parshas Tetzaveh normally gets shoved in between Shkalim and Zachar, and our mind's already on Purim and Shkalim and Zachar and Amalek and Mechias Amalek. But it's a second week to think about the Beis HaMikdash and the Mishkan. Obviously, the natural division between the two is that Truma describes the Klei HaMikdash, and Tetzaveh focuses a little more on Big Tekuna, although the beginning starts with the menorah and the Shemen Hamor, and the end is about the Mizbeach HaZahav. So it is a little bit Big Tekuna, but there's other ideas in there as well. But I wanted to discuss a medrash which actually appears in Truma, so I apologize, it's not officially Tetzaveh, but think of Truma Tetzaveh, which this year is separate. The medrash describes a really fascinating story that most people are probably aware of because it appears in Rashi, but the medrash teases it out a little bit more colorfully. You go back to Parshas Vayechi when Yaakov is taking leave of his sons and his family. And he says, V'chaya Elokimi machem, one day Hashem will be with you. And what is he saying? Hashem is with them throughout. One day Hashem will be with them. So medrash says that Yaakov's telling them one day Hashem will really be with you. You're going to build a Beis HaMikdash, you'll build a Mishkan, V'yasalim Mikdash, V'shachanti B'socham, you'll have the Shechina, literally, Imachem, Lifnei Hashem. And he told them that I want you to prepare for that day, but not just mentally far off one day, a couple hundred years from now, but he actually delivered Atzei Shitim to them, these long, tall acacia trees. Now, where did Yaakov get them from? According to the Medrash, he already had them in his mind when he departs Eretz Yisrael in Parshas Vayigash, and his sojourn in Beersheba is to cut down these Atzei Shitim. So he's taking the Atzei Shitim down with him to Mitzrayim, delivering it to his children on his deathbed, and urging them to plan for that day that they'll need the Atzei Shitim. Could you imagine planning hundreds of years in advance? We talk about planning. We're big planners. Financial planning, retirement planning, medical planning, family planning. We're big planners. We should be planners. Baruch Hashem, the ability to plan and to look into the future and predict the future, not through prophecy in ways that are divinely delivered, but it's something called statistics. And statistics allows us, at least communally, to predict our common future and allocate resources more efficiently, and leads to urbanization, and statistics help us. Without statistics, we couldn't predict the future, and we could not create large settings in which we have to think about. If you live on a farm, you don't have to think about how you allocate the milk you get from your cow every day. You just drink it, and you give it to 5 other people in your family. But if you live in a city, you have to know how many cows to herd and graze and where to build train stations and city planning so that you can manage large resources in a coordinated fashion. So planning is great. Are you involved in religious planning as well? Sometimes when I interview boys for the yeshiva, I want to try to gauge, you have so many ambitions in your life, and I don't ask them the question, I want to try to tease it out of them in my own mind. Is this a boy with religious ambition? Some boys learn more in high school, some boys learn less, some boys have more traction and less traction. I have to try to decide, does this young man bring ambition to his religion, or he just wants a job, a house, a wife, a car, and a big salary? Or does he want to accomplish something? Does he want to be excellent in Avodas Hashem? And people define that differently, and maybe you push it off into the future, right? You don't necessarily act on it when you're young, and when you get older, you act upon it. So it's a dramatic statement about planning hundreds of years in advance. Yaakov already envisions the Beis HaMikdash. Reminds me a little bit of Az Yashir, where they're celebrating the victory, they're celebrating the trouncing of Pyro, they're celebrating Sis Pyro, V'Hashem Yishbilcha, Aziv Azim Raskavi, and then they start thinking about to the Emo V'Sitei Bahar Nachlascha, Machol Shivtecha, Pa'at Hashem, Mikdash Hashem. Also think about Beis HaMikdash, usually. Like, what do you get there? It's a poetic leap of faith, an imaginative leap of faith, but they're already planning it again. It's not planning and crunching numbers and allocating resources, but it's imagining something, imagining the future. So it's a testament to Yaakov Avinu and his children and people carrying it in the desert, how they carried it through the Yam Suf. Kind of these long, tall trees. You can just think about how tall they must have been. At least 10 amos tall, probably more. And the height of the crushing. And it also reminds us that sometimes envisioning the future and the plan you have for the future can serve as a hedge against the dreariness and the frustration of the present. Now that's a very, very delicate dance, because when you run to the future and you flee from the present, that's called escapism, where you don't face challenges because you wait for them to disappear, and that's called procrastination and emotional laziness and letting things happen, and of course they never happen, and you just end up playing an eternal waiting game. But if you know that tomorrow you have something planned and you will return to certain realities that you can't achieve today, then you can weather the storm. You say, well, right now I'm going through a difficult period, difficult day, difficult month, I'm distracted, taxis, whatever, but it's not who I am. And I can think about what I'm going to do tomorrow or the next month or the next year. Think about Shabbos. Shabbos, it's so important to have that planning on Shabbos too. Shabbos gets away from you pretty fast. You're tired, and if you don't have that expectation, talking to myself right now, don't worry, it gets away from me fast. I'm exhausted by the time Shabbos comes. And I don't always treat the Shabbos the way I think I should. And sometimes I think about what I want to accomplish Shabbos. I'm trying to be intentional, purposeful if I have. Very often I just don't have those resources available. But what I want to accomplish, what I want to read, what I want to learn, what I want my Shabbos to look like, because that's, for many people, their day of spirituality, their day of being alone with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shabbos L'Hashem. So it's such a drama of people planning hundreds of years in advance for this great moment. And you can imagine the vindication and gratification and jubilation and euphoria. We've held on to these dreams through thick and thin, brutalized by Egyptian oppression. We still held fast to our belief and our faith and here it is. And you can only imagine what we'll feel like when the Beis HaMikdash is rebuilt, Be'ezras Hashem. And we went through thick and thin for you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we suffered in this country for you, and we built history for you, and we're in OU Israel for you, and the rest of Israel also. And when HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals himself, and the second Olam B'Malchus Shakai, let's face it, it'll feel great. I don't know about you, I see it, I hope I'll live through, I'll feel pretty good about myself, and I think you're allowed to feel good about yourself. Last I checked, that's a good thing when you serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu and you're successful in Avodas Hashem. You're supposed to feel good about yourself. But then the Medrash continues that there were some people that didn't anticipate and predict and imagine this happening. Now, who were the Atzei Shittim protectors and the Templars of the Atzei Shittim and who weren't, I don't know. But there were some people who weren't preparing and planning and holding materials and gold and silver and whatever they got from the Yam Suf. They were just moseying along through the desert and not really thinking much far in advance, too far in advance. And the lashon of the Medrash is, they didn't bring anything fancy schmancy, nothing prepared. Whatever they had lying around, whatever strings and dyes. Pasuk, I think it's in Tetzaveh, although the Medrash is in Trum. Anyone that had tcheles and argaman, or maybe in Vayakel, doesn't make a difference. The one that had tcheles and argaman, when I have my drawer, open up the drawer, look at this, I got some strings of tcheles. I've got some argaman dye. Great. Let's bring it to the Beis HaMikdash. And the Medrash ends with validating that. Kol asher nimtzai tash atzei shittim. Some people actually had atzei shittim planned, when other people just had things they hadn't planned on. And there's that other frequency of Avodas Hashem, not the atzei shittim frequency, which we had to plan for this 400 years in advance, 210 years earlier, because there's no atzei shittim that grows in the desert. The only atzei shittim you can find is in Beersheba. Now, he may have cut them down in Mitzrayim, but at least the Medrash says Yaakov cuts them down 200 years before Yetzias Mitzrayim. So it's not just thinking about what's going to happen in the next couple of months, but the next couple of centuries. Then there's a different frequency in which the goalposts move and something happens unexpected and unanticipated. And can you react to the change and the surprise and the serendipity when things happen that you weren't really expecting? And sometimes it's easier when everything goes as planned, and it's harder when there's no plan. And even the great planners, as you and I both know, plans don't always materialize the way you expect them. And then you have to pivot and you and I both know those are the hard parts of life. That's where you really prove yourself. Pivot without selling your soul and move off something without necessarily betraying who you are and your values. And some people are wooden-headed and they can't pivot, and then the game moves away from them. And some people are always pivoting just to match whatever the trends are, and then they lose their soul. And how do you find that sense of who you are and be true to who you are, be true to yourself, but also change? So, and it's a nice, crystal clear, not contrast, but complementary picture between the people who already had the Atzei Shittim and the plan was coming to fruition, and the people who just didn't plan, but they're part of it. And the two great leaders of our people, Avraham Avinu and Moshe Rabbeinu, share a lot in common, by the way, more than you would think. But one of the aspects they share in common is they each got rerouted, and their names convey that they are being rerouted and that they're able to be rerouted. Avram is Avram HaIvri. He's from a different place. He didn't see himself growing up in Eretz Yisrael. When I grew up, I did not see myself here in Yerushalayim, sitting and talking to you from OU Israel. My life was Brooklyn. Pretty good place to have a life. And that's how I saw myself. And if I had to look into my crystal ball in the future at age 17, that's where my life was heading. And then I came from another place in the footsteps, as we all do, whoever makes Aliyah, the footsteps of Avraham Avinu. And Moshe is the same. It's not geographic, but it is mental and existential. Ki min hamayim mishisiu. Moshe has so many names. Moshe, and Tov, and Chaver, and Avigdor, and Tuvia, all great names. And yet, the one name, which is the least holy, because it's not Tov, and Chaver, and Avigdor, and it's Moshe, and it sounds so prosaic. Ki min hamayim mishisiu. It's like you're being called February, because I'm born in February. Because you were born in February, so everyone's going to call you February. Thank you. Give me a name that reflects something a little bit more than just the circumstance of my birth or the circumstance of my delivery. Okay, so it's supernatural, it's miraculous. It's a pretty good event to remember, but it's something deeper. Ki min hamayim mishisiu. Mayim represents a flow and a stream and a current and a direction and an arc, Eresi, that you happen to be along and driven along. And Moshe is taken out of that arc, growing up in base para of luxury and comfort, and he is repositioned into a different arc. And he travels the same journey that Avram ultimately travels, a different type of a journey. But ultimately, existentially, they're each taken out of their plan, and they're responders, they're not reactors, they're not proactive. And in a moment of revealed wisdom, that's maybe unintentional revealed wisdom, when Paro in the beginning of Parshas Bo at some point says, you take the people and the children, but not the animals, and Moshe says, "V'anachnu lo neda ma na'avodas Hashem ad bo'enu sham." We're all leaving, we just don't know what Hashem will want of us. So in the moment, that's a very practical, logical, frontal response to Paro's recalcitrance to let them all go, because we just need all hands on deck. We just know what's going to happen at sea. This is not sea, it's a desert, but it resonates with something a little bit larger, beyond the Moshe Paro moment. It resonates with that sense of we just don't know what Hashem will ask of us and how we will serve Hashem until we get to that moment. And that moment changes, and our avodas Hashem changes. And we have to allow change to hit us and respond and recalibrate and pivot without compromising. And good luck on that one, but it's definitely what Chazal are trying to crystallize in this complement between the Atzei Shittim people who were planning and preparing and envisioning, and Moshe made the announcement, said, great, here we are. We were waiting for you for hundreds of years to request the Atzei Shittim. And then there were some others who just didn't have that immediate material ready. They just happened to find, and that's also part of avodas Hashem, and that's also valid. So, Shabbat Shalom, Parshas Tetzaveh.